All right, guys, part 8 of breaking down Mike Bickle's emails to Jane Doe's husband, and man, it has been a ride. So where we left off last time was Mike was trying to use Jane Doe's own words against her in an intimidating way, talking about how she was like gushing on him in all these emails, and I quote, "But now suddenly she dramatically switches her story." And maybe to someone who is not trauma informed, that may be what it looks like, but let me assure you, that is not at all what is happening here. For those of you who are familiar with the term Stockholm Syndrome, I'd love to just unpack that a little bit. So Stockholm Syndrome, another word for it is called trauma bonding, is essentially a dynamic in which a victim develops a deep sense of attachment, empathy, or loyalty to their captor or abuser. It is totally a survival response and a survival mechanism. And it is very much a primal instinct. Oftentimes, this occurs when there is abuse, but there's also an element of like nurturance or care. So it can be very confusing for a victim. It is a really complex and nuanced psychological phenomenon, and it was first observed in Stockholm when two criminals went to go rob a bank in 1973. And at some point during their attempted robbery, the situation escalated and they landed themselves in a 6-day hostage situation. And during that time, the hostages formed a bond with their captors. And so we can see this play out in a variety of different contexts. We see this a lot with cults and things like that. And so I will go over a few of the elements that come into play when developing trauma bonding or Stockholm Syndrome, and you guys can see what you think. So a huge factor in all of this is a perceived threat or vulnerability or a sense of shared adversity. Essentially, a captor or an abuser has to convince the victim or hostage that like there is an external bad guy. In the case of the Stockholm robbery, they had convinced the hostages that like they were all on the same team. They showed random acts of kindness, like the police were the bad guys, even to the point where over time the victims protected their captors in the police shootout and later would even go on to testify in their favor in court. Other elements that make the soil just ripe for development of a trauma bond are things like isolation and fostering dependence on a leader or an abuser. So this can be as basic as like food, water, shelter, safety. For other people, it can be they only feel emotionally safe with their abuser because, we see this a lot with cult stuff. It's like the world doesn't understand. They're not going to get you like I get you. We're in this together. Again, that sense of shared adversity. Really anything that makes a person feel like their captor or abuser is their only sense of like safety, belonging, we as humans are pack animals. And so biologically, we are wired to seek safety within context of relationship with other people. And when there is someone who is in a more powerful position than you are, whether you're depending on them for where you're going to get your next meal or whether you're depending on them for a feeling of love and belonging, that is a huge dynamic that comes into play with trauma bonding. And just for the record, the term Stockholm Syndrome is a bit dated. Nowadays, it is more commonly referred to as trauma bonding. But while we have this example in mind, I would just like to draw a few parallels and give you guys some food for thought. So the Stockholm criminals villainized the police and the system in efforts to make their captives feel a sense of safety and protection at the hands of their captors as opposed to fear. Instead, they feared the police more. The Stockholm criminals had their hostages isolated from the rest of the world, and so the only feedback and information they were getting about what was safe or unsafe was coming from their captors. Mike Although his people are not separated from the rest of the world in terms of access, he has gone ahead and given them guidance as to what is demonic or satanic and the lens through which to view what is safe or unsafe, what is dangerous. In fact, even upon him stepping back from ministry, the ELT continued to perpetuate that narrative of social media being untrustworthy, dangerous. There has been a very heavy indoctrination process for many of the people involved with IHOP Kansas City. And hey, I'm not saying everybody, but with cases in which someone is an abuser hiding in plain sight, there are probably only a couple, like maybe one, maybe two, maybe a few people who have really, really seen their dark underbelly, because their entire personality is designed around making themselves look very good and very believable. That way, if or when a victim ever did come out, the victim would be very hard to believe. And so it is my personal opinion that that is what we are seeing here. And I feel like at this point we have more evidence that points to Mike's guilt than his innocence. But even aside from all of the sexual abuse allegations, I can say with certainty, if this email is legit, he is a very spiritually and emotionally abusive person. Okay, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now that I've blabbed on for 6.5 minutes about trauma bonding, let's finally get into it. So we're starting at the top of page 5, Satan as the black horse for Revelation 12:10 accusation. And Revelation 12:10 is about the Lord striking down Satan as the accuser of the brethren. We'll make sure every story will have maybe 5 to 10 different narratives that people can pick from. All of them will have dark distortion and exaggeration in them. Many IHOP staff, current and thousands over the years, will be embarrassed and even very angry to hear such horrible stories about me. One reason is because their critics will attack them with these stories and will promote any number of the distorted negative stories that will emerge on social media. It will be nightmare. Okay, pause. Most people who are super susceptible to narcissistic tactics are those with very high levels of empathy and high levels of concern for other people. They don't want to be in charge. They want to keep people happy, which is why they stay in so long. So this is another example of motivational empathy. I don't think Mike is super concerned about his people and the way they feel. I think he knows that Jane Doe would be concerned if people were very angry or super devastated or embarrassed. It's more intimidation, it's more manipulating and playing off of her emotions, but let's keep going. Humbly, which is hilarious to me, I would not be able to keep my commitment to send you monthly support. Not because of being angry. Of course not, Mike. You've clarified that at least 6 times. I will always love and seek to bless you and your children, but because others would surely find out and it would appear that I was trying to bribe you, and someone will surely put that on the social media, and then many will make more horrible comments about me trying to bribe you. I hate that I will not be able to support you financially or to use you to help distribute finances to key house of prayer leaders in the nations as planned. Okay. Wow, a lot to unpack here. In addition to the fact that financial control and withdrawal is a super duper huge tactic in narcissistic and controlling relationships. But this is such a broader scale. But what stands out to me even more, again, is the doublespeak of I don't want it to appear that I'm trying to bribe you. So if you don't speak out, I will keep financially supporting you. But if you do speak out, I won't continue to financially support you. But that's just for appearances. I feel like I could totally do a whole segment on that, but I'll keep going because I already talked a lot. I know the Lord will take care of you, and I am sure that you do not need me to help. After a few years, I will try to figure out a way to get you some support. I will never change my commitment to help you and Doe and your children. My commitment to you is from the Lord, and it is very precious to me. Again, this is Mike being like, I'm the good guy. It's the image. It's the people with Satan breathing on their minds. I'm not angry. I want to keep supporting you. It just looks bad. Buddy, if your commitment to this family is from the Lord and you're determined to honor that, you'd keep supporting them no matter what. I'll be back for part 9. All right, fam, part 9 of breaking down Mike Bickle's emails to Jane Doe's husband. We left off at the part where Mike was telling Jane Doe's husband that he was going to withdraw financial support if they went public because he didn't want it to appear that he had been bribing them, I guess with hush money, which is literally a reverse bribe. He goes on bringing God into it, as he often does, which, to be completely transparent, is the part that pisses me off the most. He, in my opinion, is just like using the Lord's name in vain as a manipulative tool over and over and over again. Mike, if you have been openly committed to supporting this ministry, and it has been clear to everybody in your world that this is part of your heart from the Lord for this ministry, there is no reason that you would need to withdraw finances under these circumstances, other than if you're just being shady and sinister and intimidating, pulling at every string that you can pull to see if you can get your way in this. Anyway, we're starting about halfway down the page. Mike writes, as I said, as of now, I still want the 3 of us to labor together in a deep way in the nations. My role would be mostly proving finances. Is that providing? Who knows? Making handouts and connecting you to many others and being a prayer covering for your family. Then in red, it is not too late for that to happen. I still believe in you and Doe, and I will want to go forward, and I want to bless your family much. I would be hurt, but never angry, again, never angry, at Doe, and I will always be gracious to her from my heart. I will always be an advocate for you and her to others, even in the midst of the 5 to 10 scenarios, what would surely rise up to trouble you and your family. I assure you that you do not have all the info on these. That's in bold. What does that mean, Mike? That's sketchy. I am not being secretive. There it is. You know Mike is doing something when he tells you he's not doing it. I was just not prepared today for this. I know I am rabbling right now because of how I feel physically and emotionally, but I wanted to jot a few thoughts down so you have them in your mind before we meet again. And by thoughts, you mean veiled threats, intimidation, trying to use Jane Doe's own words against her. Nobody's going to believe her. People are really angry. It's going to cause catastrophe. You're removing financial support from the ministry if they go public. You're not angry at anybody. You're the good guy. You're the holy man of God. But everybody else, you can just not seem to get a rank on. Those are the people that we need to be concerned about. Got it. Those were the thoughts. First of all, Mike then later refuses to meet with Jane Doe's husband a second time. We can get into that later. And he blames it on Stuart Greaves, saying that Stuart advised him not to meet again with Jane Doe's husband. From my understanding, Mike has refused to meet with anyone from the advocate group ever since this meeting, citing and weaponizing Matthew 18, making Stuart Greaves function as his flying monkey. Stuart, I don't know if you are just under these same kind of tactics and that you don't have a clear and sound mind in all of this, and how much you're complicit in all of it. Either way, the impact is the same, and I hope that you come to terms with that and take accountability. Let's keep going. I prefer to not have go over each one again in person, but I will if needed. I have much more to share. I bet you do, Mike. I was so shocked today that I could not be as clear as I wanted. I was totally spinning, and as I told you, I had a low-grade fever this morning. Again, what is the redemptive takeaway from all of this that will inspire humidly? I'm assuming he meant humility, but he can't spell it and he can't embody it. Love and obedience to Jesus and more. I cannot see anything redemptive, just long-term pain and many really hurt relationships. Help, Lord. Do not, sir, put this on God when God has been very clear about what you need to do in situations like these. Confess and repent. That is all that is being asked of you. Anyway, I took a breather. Here we go. Last paragraph. I never did tell you the 2 to 3 things that I wanted to share with you about the other topics. Again, today I appreciate the privacy you provided for me in meeting me alone and for your kind tone today. We praise the things we like to see more of. Blessings, Mike. I don't doubt that Mike is pretty rattled from this meeting because, and I can put the screenshots here, he was really wanting this meeting to be alone. I think on some level he knew what might be coming, but he was still kind of grasping at straws, trying to make the meeting. I think he had asked Jane Doe's husband upwards of 4 or 5 times, like demanding that he come alone. Please come alone. I want to tell you things that I can't say with other people here. I trust you. I think you'll be encouraged. What God's showing me about finances. And so I think Mike had intended to kind of like get control of the situation. And then it sounds like after the direction the meeting went, Mike then gets to a point of like worst pain of his life, can't think straight. He had a low-grade fever, all of the things. That is all for the October 9th emails. 2 weeks later, Jane Doe's husband reached back out to Mike to ask for another meeting, this time with some of the advocate team. And Mike responds and says this, and I'll just try to quickly go through this one. I did not do my emails until late last night. Stuart talked to me on the phone soon after you emailed him, and so I read your email late. I am fully submitted myself to Stuart for ministry accountability, not because of what you were saying, because I resigned from IHOP 3 years ago to be full-time with Friends of the Bridegroom. But I believe every ministry needs to be accountable to a mature man of God who has freedom and access to call national leaders anytime he feels led by the Spirit. So I am not under the ELT, but under Stuart and whatever national leaders he wants to involve. Do you see the subtle shifting that's going on here? Stuart asked me not to meet with you with a group. Yes, he fine with you and me meeting alone, but not with a group. More control, more power dynamics, more control through resistance. I am shocked that you already asked Brian and Wes to come be witnesses. Yeah, absolutely. Matthew 18 says, if he doesn't listen at first, then bring 1 or 2 witnesses. That means you are sharing info with them that is clearly outside of the biblical process. No. That concerns me that a, quote, group feels liberty to set aside Matthew 18:15-18 or to adjust it when it does not seem to work for their plan. What in the hypocrisy is going on here? I would be shocked if Brian and Wes came if you knew what was up. I know their hearts. That is not like them. I trust them. Pause. This is further kind of trying to make Jane Doe seem discreditable, almost like they're good men. They have good character. If they really knew the truth, they wouldn't be partnering up with her. I trust them. It's essentially trying to make it look like he's playing good guys with the good guys, if that makes sense. I heard a faint whisper that there was a very small group. Was whisper? Anyway, I mentioned that in an email to you. It pained me, but then I reasoned, surely whoever it is, they are godly and would never violate a biblical process. Plus, I received the email where you said you were not going public, but wanted love and gentleness, blah, 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 $. That blessed me so much, so I just let go of this issue for now. So kind of you, Mike, and did not think much about it, knowing that you and me would talk again at the right time. Water under the bridge, my man. Those are my words, not his, in case you're not reading. Mike says, the group seems to be quiet, which is good. I bet it is for you, Mike. But I am just now grasping more of what your group is doing, but I am not sure yet. Stuart is very biblically based, has much ministry experience, and is filled with the fear of God and is focused on and is focused doing what serves God's redemptive purposes. I am confident he will obey God without hesitation, and he will oversee a biblical process. Will he obey God or will he obey Mike, is what I wonder. I am still waiting on ladies who allegedly have a story to come to me and Stuart according to Matthew 18. No, I'm very sure none will come because they do have a real story. I mean, a typo on your part, but yeah, they won't come, but not for that reason. I am praying. Much love, MB. Then he does a PS about resigning from the board, ELT, leadership, and staff. He talks about maybe doing a class without getting a stipend or honorarium, angel smiley face, and doing podcasts and Zooms. Super tone deaf and entitled. Well, time's up. Eric Voles, you're next.